Well, welcome to part two. The 1970 Pontiac LeMans. We're going to call this one, What Did We Get Ourselves Into? If you watched part one, which hopefully you did, or you have subscribed to the channel so you're going to catch all of these parts, we ran into some wiring issues which we thought were going to be a quick little fix that became considerably more of a pain. It also made us question what we found and what we were going to find in the engine. A couple of things that just didn't seem quite right. Now this engine is a recently rebuilt motor. For what that's worth, you know, in the used car world, you really never know what you're going to get into, as we can tell from the wiring. So we've been kicking around for like the last 2 weeks or so as far as what we want to do, and we're all in agreement that it's probably best to play on the safe side here. Pull this motor, double check whatever needs to be done, and replace what needs to be replaced, put it back in. While we have it out, we can fix any wiring issues and any other issues that we have. There's also a possibility we may be upgrading the suspension, possibly even the brakes, during this time period as well. Now, something you're going to notice, at some point in time, the world decided to be warm again, and the last video, it was snowing outside, and now it's 75 degrees and beautiful out. I promise this has only been over a 2-week period. We're not snowballing you guys here, but it is actually 75 degrees outside in Ohio, when it's not supposed to be in the middle of winter. So, beautiful day, got the garage doors up. We're going to go back to the back here and we're going to get the motor pulled out of this 1970 Pontiac LeMans. That 455 will then go on a trip over to Westerville, to our wonderful friends over at Performance Research. Joe and Bob have done quite a lot of work for us, and they're pretty much the end-all be-all when it comes to engine builders in this part of the world. So we're going to actually run this 455 in its current form, as it sits right now. No repairs, no upgrades, no nothing, on their engine dyno. We're going to see what it puts down to give us kind of a baseline. Something we've run into a lot of times with our customers is you think that things are running pretty well, but you really never know. And in this case, it's going to give us an ability to say, you know what, this car ran pretty well, other than a little bit of problems here and there, but how much better can it be? So before we do anything as far as tearing it down, rebuilding, upgrading, any of that, we're going to give you guys a baseline video, and you're going to get to see this thing run on the dyno. So let's head on back to the back of the shop here, where the magic happens, and we'll get started. It's a busy day here at Lucore Automotive, and oddly enough, we have quite a bit in the shop that's old school. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff because it's so. Anyway, as I said, it's a beautiful day. Everybody's enjoying themselves and actually sweating for a change. So here she is, still sitting in her bay. We had her before. She's not still sitting there. We had to push her back in. So there she sits. Got my time-lapse camera set up, and we're going to get the recording going here in a little bit. I'll spare you guys the 2-hour process of pulling a motor out and getting all the fun stuff out of this thing. But I'll get back to you guys in real-time speed here in a little bit. As we get to the undercarriage of the car, most of this was in pretty good shape. The fuel line running to the fuel pump was reasonably new, so it released pretty easily. As we work our way backwards, we knock out the engine mount bolts, which came out pretty quickly. take off the torque converter bolts, and access a couple of the easy-to-get-to bell bolts. Anything we can remove today makes our life a little bit easier tomorrow. Alright, so as is usual with this thing, she fought me the whole way, and we are out of time. It is 6 o'clock, which is a little bit past the end of work day. So where we are at this point, AC is removed, bracketry is removed. It's going to stay in the car when the engine comes out. Radiator shroud are off. Fan clutch is still on the motor. Pull that off when it comes out. Cables are all disconnected. Wiring's all disconnected from video part 1 that you saw before. Carburetor's removed. Carburetor lift plate is on there, so we can pull the motor out here in a minute. Engine mount bolts are taken out. The bell bolts need to be removed, and then we're pretty much ready to rock and roll. All your hoses and everything else are already removed, which are all going to be replaced. They were disgusting and terrible, so we're going to replace all that stuff with brand new stuff, regardless of what we end up doing. So tomorrow we'll get at her here first thing in the morning, get the bell bolts removed. Once the bell bolts are removed, we get the engine hoist over here, jack this thing up in the air, and she'll be ready to pull out. So 2 hours or so we're into it. Say 2.5 hours we'll have the motor out. That's not too bad. So we'll get her out, we'll get her in the truck, and we will get her over to Performance Research in the morning, and then we'll have a conversation with Joe and Bob over there. Stay tuned. Alright, so last night we left her, just have the bell bolts to remove and the header bolts, which if you've ever done on a Pontiac are a nightmare. So probably half hour, 45 minutes, we'll get the bolts removed, and then we'll be ready to pull the motor out. By this point in the process, you can tell I'm a little bit annoyed. Removing header bolts on a Pontiac is a challenge. Anybody who's ever done it before will absolutely agree with me. But this gets a little bit more complicated, which you'll see here in a little bit. One of the problems with quoting out a job like this, if it was a customer, is figuring out what kind of time to quote. Is it a 2-hour job, a 3-hour job, a 10-hour job? Now, by the books, most of this stuff is pretty simple. Unfortunately, with 50 years of corrosion and God only knows how many hands involved in this, sometimes you run into unexpected complications. As you can see from the frequent shop trips back to the toolbox, we had to change tools. Get an extension, change a socket, get a wrench, get a stubby wrench, get an air tool, you name it, we threw just about everything we could at it. A hearty thank you to my coworker Bruce for his assistance in this project. As you can see, he jumped in a few times with extra angle pieces and tools. As an old-timer, he's used to a lot of this stuff. He grew up around this, and he's been wrenching on things from Virginia to California for most of his life. After we got those bolts removed, it was on to transmission bell bolts once again. So, transmission jack stand comes out, we start working on some transmission bolts. Exhaust comes down in order to be able to drop the transmission.
Now, the smart thing to do at this point would have been drop the transmission, pull the drive shaft, and go the easy way. But why do the easy thing?
Alright, so if you've been paying attention to the time lapse, you've seen me walking underneath the corner of this car over and over and over again. First off, I hate whoever installed these headers. They use 3 different size bolts, all with different size heads, to hold these headers in, which is really annoying when they're really hard to get out. Secondly, I'll show you what the major headache is, and hopefully you can see this. Back in there, there's a bolt on top of those headers. See those collector tubes come in? There's a bolt right above it. Well, the neat thing is with the Pontiac design and the way these long tube headers work is you cannot access that bolt from down here, which would be easy. You cannot access these with a socket. You cannot access this with a closed-end wrench. The only thing you can access it with is an open-ended wrench. And the neat thing is it's blind, so you can't even tell whether or not you're turning it properly. So it's quarter turn, maybe, and then roll the wrench over. Quarter turn, maybe, roll the wrench over. So your fine motor skills in your hands start wearing out a bit. Anyway, we're about a quarter of the way out. I'm going to keep on rolling here and hopefully get that bolt out. That's the last we got as far as the header bolts go. And then pop the bell bolts and she's ready to come out. What did I say, half an hour? Yeah, it's been 2 hours. Close enough.
With the power steering pump and alternator removed, already having removed the air conditioning bracketry and pulleys and pump off of the other side, we keep moving along. Unfortunately, one more bolt on the passenger side of the headers was still not releasing. That bolt is designed to back out a little bit, at which point in time the header will slide and allow it to drop past that bolt. Unfortunately, in this situation, it wasn't having it. So up, down, engine in, engine out, wiggling it around, banging it around, and a little bit of cursing, it finally decided to release itself. Make sure all your lines are disconnected. Double check your vacuum lines, your hoses, all your wires, so you don't break anything that you don't need to do. And eventually, the engine came out.
Alright, so night number 3. Having to do this after hours because we're too busy during the day to be able to get this done. So, got her back in here again this evening, and less than 2 hours left. And we got 4 bolts removed in 2 hours. That's pretty good progress, I guess, when you're in a Pontiac. So, got everything disconnected, everything released. Nothing broke, which is a nice feeling. So, engine is out. While we have the engine out, we're going to go ahead and refresh the Turbo 350 transmission that's sitting back there. We're going to pull that out here. Don't need to show you that. It's not very exciting. But we'll get the Turbo 350 out and get that refreshed. And this guy is going to go over to Bob and Joe in the morning to Performance Research in Westerville, good friends of ours who are going to run this guy as it sits, no magic, no behind-the-scenes gimmicks, to see how she does. There's a video of this guy, which you'll see here in a minute. Burning the tires off the back end. Ran pretty well. But we want to see where she is now. And then once we go blow her apart, clean everything, maybe a little bit of upgrades, put it back together again, and we'll compare. So you don't normally see the same motor before and after. Once you, before you fix things and then after you fixed and upgraded things, it's usually there's some kind of a black magic or we've changed blocks or heads or whatever. We're not going to do any of that. Hopefully the 6X heads on this thing are okay. So anyway, hopefully you've watched this entire process. We're going to get this guy loaded up in the truck and get her over to Westerville to Bob and Joe.
One of the wonderful parts about living in Central Ohio is we have access to all kinds of professionals. And with 270, it's usually 15, maybe 20 minutes to just about anywhere in the city. In this case, we loaded up and we were headed towards Westerville in order to drop off this motor. However, it was Tuesday, and that means Buck-a-Bone Tuesday. Hey, City Barbecue. After a quick lunch stop, it's back on the road. The nice thing is, City Barbecue is just down the road from Performance Research, so down Westerville Road we go. This drive, especially in fast motion, is pretty quick. But in all honesty, the normal drive time from Plain City, where our shop is, to Westerville, where their shop is 15, maybe 20 minutes. In terrible traffic, maybe 30. Not too bad. All right, so engine is unloaded. We are at Performance Research in Westerville. This is Joe. This is Bob, Wizard's apprentice, and they are the ones that are going to bring this guy back to life for us. So we're going to end this video with us discussing our plans. As we have talked about before, plans never work out, but where we want to go, what we expect, and we're going to start the next video with this thing actually sitting on the dyno, which is just around the corner from here. So we were all kind of talking about what we see, what we don't like, what we do like. It's got the right parts, we think. 72 block, 76 6X heads, some really crappy valve covers, my adapter plate on the back, so a little on the rich side. Runs a little on the rich side. Plugs are completely black. A quadrijet that's not been tuned. A borrowed distributor cap from Lord only knows what. None of the pulleys are aligned properly.
You are going to run the HEL?
Yes.
Okay. Has that been worked?
Nope.
Okay.
This came when I purchased this car. It was shorting out against the firewall because the clear plastic distributor cap was cracked. So it had a lightning arc that was jumping off the back, which was causing a little bit of a misfire. So
it looked cool.
So it did look really nice.
Well, it'd be interesting at night. I mean,
yeah. So we pulled this out of it was literally on the shelf, and pulled it and stuck it on, and it worked, and that was the end of that.
Is this the way these came?
That is the original ground strap quality.
A friend of mine back then in the old days had a 442, same car, I believe, and they had, for some reason, had been certain these were not there. They were left off. So then it turned out that the engine round became the shifter cable, and it exploded maybe 3 times before they figured out what was going on.
It wasn't grounding at all?
Yeah, it literally would explode.
That's it.
Like, and they had to have the car towed, and they'd replace it, and then we wanted to do it again. And that was because these weren't there.
This had originally this whole process started, which if you watch episode 1 of this whole mess, was because of a charging issue, and it was one of those things that everything I touched was, brittle, broken. Like this one's at least got something that this is just a So it's one of those situations that everything I've run into on this motor makes me worried, and if I'm going to put 5 to 10,000 miles on this motor, doing whatever I'm going to be doing, I don't want it to blow up when I'm in.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in making sure these are good, and
Yes.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in making sure that they are connected to each other, and from each other to a good chassis ground.
Right.
From a standpoint of making sure that the spark plug has a good solid ground, and it's not isolated from the motor via the head gasket and sealing compounds and that sort of thing.
Yeah, this will certainly be we'll be replacing
You can get this kind of wire too.
those grounds. Yeah,
that
actual
that
ground
round,
straps.
that's a good lick. The pickup guys, when we see those motors when they come in here, they'll have a big wood flap going across here to the other one, and one going to the cage.
Makes sense. Yeah, I don't want to go too crazy. I mean, the idea is we want to film.
Do you have headers for this car?
I do.
Like headers or just
Yes.
the stock iron?
No, I do have. If you want to put stock manifolds, I have those too. But I do actually have a.
No,
set
we
of
have headers for the
Yeah.
dynos for a Pontiac, where they'll fit this.
I have,
configuration.
as we see in this video earlier, I have some Hecha in Mexico, no name, god awful, pain in my ass, excuse my French, headers that I will probably throw away. Honestly, we can run it on your headers, and then I'll just buy a new set of good ones.
Well, these aren't good, but we had them made for the dyno, and they turned
Yeah.
out pretty well.
Fine with me.
And they line up with our room exhaust.
Sure.
So you'll see when we get there, it works out pretty well. Just clicks all together.
Yeah. No, it will be running long tubes, but it'll probably be running a new set of long tubes because.
I can't tell from all the crust that's on it what intake manifold you
It is
got.
an Edelbrock.
I can see.
Don't
that
know
part.
what kind of
I can
Edelbrock.
see that part of it.
Yeah, it needs a bath. This is probably going to be the ugliest thing that you guys have had on your dyno in a long time.
No, that's fine.
But it doesn't have to be pretty to be fast. So
It would be fine.
let's take our rough guesses, and this will be on video.
Oh boy.
Joe, what do you think it's going to make?
As is, right?
As
Well,
is, as it sits.
230 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque.
230 horsepower, 300 foot-pounds of torque.
I was going to be a little more generous. I was going to say somewhere around 260, 270.
Okay, and how much torque?
Oh, 350, something like that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be the
Now, none of us know what's inside of this thing.
none.
Now, this is
none
a crack sheet. I mean,
none whatsoever.
I'm not sure I want to be recorded saying that. Because
We have no idea.
Yeah.
I know as little about this motor as you
Does
guys.
this car have a tag?
No.
Oh, so when you went to the racetrack, you had no idea?
No idea.
Just put it in drive and
You
float
just,
it.
you just
Put it in one.
until it wouldn't go any more than shit.
Put it in one, then put it in two, and then put it in D. And usually, I tried it in second gear, and it would blow the rear end of the thing off of at 330 feet. I'd mash on it, it would step down, and it would blow the rear end apart. So I'm going to say it's going to make
These things make a ton of torque.
285
There you go.
and 365 foot-pounds of torque. I think it's going to be pretty selfie.
Okay.
I'm going to have faith in the guy that sold it to me that I wasn't sold a box of rocks. I don't know why I'm going to have that faith, but I will. So anyway, so we'll wrap this up.
right.
Thank you very much for paying
You're
attention.
welcome. When's the schedule call for this to be?
That's up to you guys.
Right now, there's an SP2 on there, and I've got another SP2 that's chomping at the bit right behind it, and neither one of them is going to take a long time. And then that guy from up north, Terry Shade, he wants to bring another one of their race motors down as soon as possible. So there's like 3 ahead of it.
That's fine.
But this shouldn't, for what we're going to do, it'll probably be done in a day, 2
Yeah.
days tops.
I mean, we're only going to do probably 1-2 pulls on it, call it a
We
day.
already know it runs, so
Yeah.
we just won't touch anything.
Ran, win, pull.
Now, remember that if this thing windows the oil filter,
I have to clean it. I understand.
yeah, you own it. If it's,
Oh, yeah, I understand.
If it breaks in half, you own both pieces.
Well, here you go. It's on video. But if it breaks in half, it's my problem, and I have to clean his dyno.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the end of this video. We're going to start over on the next one with this thing actually going in the dyno room and running on the dyno. So get your guesses in as far as what this thing's going to do or if it's going to blow itself apart. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time.